Welcome, Autobots and Decepticons. My name is Matthew Flynn, the Gladiator of Kaon, and today I'm joined by Troy Pacelli, also known as Cardon, the Klingon Cleric. And today we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball, a topic that I'm very familiar with, but as Troy will confirm, he does not know much about this series.
I'll tell you, if you tell me that this has a crossover with the Transformers, I'm going to get really confused really fast.
I don't think there is, because I've not found. There are
Okay,
multiple Transformers crossovers with other brands, but
sure.
Dragon Ball is not one I've heard of.
I mean, if it's a non-canon thing, that's
Yeah.
fine. But I mean, if because yeah, this is
Unless
going to
you
be a
count
trip for me.
Transformers powering up with a goldish coloured
Yeah,
form, a crossover, then maybe. That's happened at least once or twice.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah, but Dragon Ball, although funnily enough, Dragon Ball did start the same year as Transformers, 1984. Although I think the anime, or let's go with some ground information. So
Hmm.
Dragon Ball is a manga series and also an anime adaptation that started in 1984, and Dragon Ball is specifically a fantasy martial arts adventure story.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with like the martial arts, or I suppose just martial arts, fantasy or just genre in general.
I mean, I'm not as into it as some people are. I know that uh, Nanette really loved a lot of the Bruce Lee movies, and she's at Jackie Chan films. She's got several of them in DVDs. Michael French over at Retro Blasting is a huge fan. He knows all of these films, like all of them, and just did a video recently on how you can get your hands on DVDs that have up till now been very difficult to get, but I just have the passing knowledge. I would watch them on Saturday mornings, Kung Fu theater, that kind of stuff. And, I had no idea who the characters were, just loved watching the fight scenes, and that's about it.
Yeah. So Dragon Ball, specifically the manga,
Mm.
has lasted 42 volumes across what is it, 519 chapters? Yeah, 519 chapters. Well, yeah, 519 chapters across 41 or 42 volumes. I have the complete manga up. I'll do this. Shall I rotate the camera? Or shall I just pick it right up? You know what? Yeah, I'll do this. I'll pick it right up. Oh, oh, there we go. I thought picking the cam up would mean it wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
but no. Apparently, it's going to anyway. Well, there goes that. Yeah. So, yeah, Dragon Ball's manga lasted 519 chapters across 42 volumes and lasted until I want to say 1992 or 93. Around the mid 90s is when the manga ended. And obviously, the anime adapted the manga, was an adaptation of the manga. Although there was a distinction about, I want to say halfway through, where the series name changed from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z. That's really only the anime that does that. There are some manga volumes that you can buy separate versions where one will say Dragon Ball and the other will say Dragon Ball Z. But I think there are versions where it's literally just Dragon Ball the whole way through,
And
or it has one name.
is there some sort of a conceptual difference between the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z?
I'm not sure exactly. I do know there are multiple points in the series where creator Akira Toriyama intended the series to end, and I
Mm-hmm.
think at the point when it changed to Z, I believe that Toriyama himself recommended to the anime staff to name it Dragon Ball Z, or the Z portion of it. to be named that. And I think his thinking was because he wanted to end the manga at a certain point. He thought, hey, Z is the last letter.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Although obviously that didn't work out like that because the Z portion of the manga is far longer than the early Dragon Ball part.
Uh,
And especially since the anime had its own anime exclusive continuation off of the end of Dragon Ball Z,
mm,
that Akira Toriyama himself had very limited interaction with the actual staff on, because it essentially went early Dragon Ball, then Dragon Ball Z, then the anime continued with Dragon Ball GT, and then obviously throughout this time you have like various movies coming out as well. There's about 20 or 21 movies now,
mm,
although they're all varying in how which ones are canon and how canon certain aspects are. You also have another aspect of the anime having a load of minor like bits of filler,
mm-hmm,
where so essentially the anime would run alongside the creation of the manga, and when the anime had adapted a chapter before Toriyama before he made another chapter after that point, the anime then had to create filler episodes or entire filler storylines in order to accommodate the fact that they caught up to the original manga and
mm-hmm.
give Toriyama time to put out more story for them to adapt. It's actually a pretty common practice in anime that is adapting a manga or adapting a manga alongside it. Because Naruto does it, One Piece does it, I think Bleach and Fairy Tail and a whole bunch of others did that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a different story if the manga's already done and finished by the time the anime comes out. But yeah, you also have Dragon Ball Super, which is a more modern show. Because after GT ended, there was a period where there wasn't really any Dragon Ball material being made outside of, say, like a TV movie or a special or something like that. And essentially, the brand was essentially considered over by like the late 90s, early 2000s. Well, more specifically in Japan. In America, obviously, it was just being dubbed into English and released. And situations like that where you get multiple different dubs and
Yeah.
some with like hilarious inaccuracies.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because yeah, and you also have actually a detail about the Dragon Ball the movies or the various movies that came out. A lot of them were really thought as of kind of tech demonstrations first and kind of stories as like a secondary thing,
Mm,
because they were really only because a lot of the movies have similar story beats to various arcs of the anime and manga that was running at the time. So it's kind of viewed as like the anime staff showing what they can actually do with a movie budget,
yeah.
which does result in multiple of the movies not really holding up quite as well.
Yeah.
Although I do enjoy multiple of them regardless of that. And also another thing that's kind of, I don't know if you call this a good thing or a bad thing, but a lot of the movies they were very difficult to actually place in continuity with the show itself, because a lot of them kind of contradicted what was going on in the show. So they weren't initially there were a lot of them early films weren't designed to fit into the anime's continuity necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a situation where one movie may slot into the anime relatively nicely, and you won't have to think too much about it. And then other movies heavily contradict what's going on, so it makes it very difficult to try and place it. I think, yeah, an example. Okay, give me a moment while I hook the while I hook the webcam back up.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
Oh. let's try this.
I gotta say, I think the only connection, the only touchstones that I have for Dragon Ball is I know the name Goku, I know the word Super Saiyan, and I know these are guys that dress in uh, semi samurai type attire and beat each other up with light blasts from their hands. That's about all I know. But yeah, that's and I think I've mentioned this on previous streams. Netter, my wife Netter of Netter's Network, uh, she used to watch the show somewhat regularly. It aired here on regular network television in syndication. Um, and I can't remember if it was Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, but that's why I had to ask what the difference was. So it may very well have been, oh, they're just calling it Dragon Ball Z now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm back. I have
Yep.
no idea what you were talking about. I heard like bits and pieces
I
of
was just
that.
I was just vamping and telling the audience about the fact that I knew so little that all I knew was Goku and Super Saiyan, and that Nanette used to watch the show on Saturday mornings.
Yeah. Okay, now that the webcam is hooked back up and I can actually show this. So I have here. Ooh, I want to catch that. Yeah, I have here the Dragon Ball Z movies. This is a collection of all of them. It also includes the 2 TV specials. History of Trunks and Bardock, the Father of Goku. And then I have this one for the early Dragon Ball movies. There's only 4 of them. Weirdly enough, this collection right here is not available outside of America for some reason. So this is a US import, and then this one I just got from Amazon. This one actually is PAL. Well, I mean, obviously there's an American version of this, but this one here is the UK one. This one is the American one only. I don't know why. That's a strange detail that I don't understand about some anime releases. Sometimes they'll be American, or the only way to get them will be from like importing them.
Sure.
Yeah, so what was it? So a good example of like some of the movies, ones that conflict with the continuity of the show, and then others that don't really, or others that can be slotted in wherever. So this one right here, Lord Slug, that one takes place during a storyline when all the characters are not on Earth and they're in space fighting I suppose an evil empire is how you describe it. But during Lord Slug, they're on. It takes place around the same time, and in the movie, they're on Earth, and an alien force then comes to Earth to fight them. So it's that movie is a situation where you can't really place it or you can't really place it before a specific storyline or after the storyline because it takes place during that same storyline. So that one's really difficult to place. But then you have a movie like the very next movie, Caller's Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
That movie has a character or takes place right after the arc where they're in space. So actually, the Dragon Ball Z story is Saiyan Saga, Frieza Saga, Android Saga, or Android/Cell Saga, and then Majin Buu Saga. The Frieza Saga is the one where they're in space fighting on another planet, fighting an evil empire. And Caller's Revenge is is a movie where the evil emperor's brother comes to Earth after the events of that story arc to then find out who killed his brother.
Mm-hmm.
So that movie could very easily be slotted into the continuity of the show, no problem, because in between the Frieza saga and early Android saga, there's like a 3 year time gap. So that movie could easily just be slotted wherever in that 3 years. Yeah, and one kind of an annoying thing about Dragon Ball is a lot of the anime or parts of the anime have been released on DVD in high quality. I've addressed this when I was on your stream a while ago,
Yep.
but for some reason, early Dragon Ball, GT, these 13 movies and the two specials, and also the newer movies that have been coming out, all of them, they've been released perfectly fine, both DVD, Blu-ray version, like high quality image, everything perfectly fine. Same for these early Dragon Ball movies as well. But for whatever reason, the original Dragon Ball Z portion of the anime, there is only like 2 or 3 releases that are actually good, high quality releases of the show. Every release is just a modified version of the orange bricks because they're like the cheapest one. They cost like £15 each. And for some reason, Funimation, when they released the anime, they released various versions on like DVD and Blu-ray, and the actual really good quality releases were released at the same time as the bad quality releases. So instead of spacing it out, they had like multiple different releases and versions of the show released all at one time, and people being like, "Oh, well, I've already bought this version, so why should I buy this version that's just released like shortly after?" They're like, no point. And that resulted in those other releases having low sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then Funimation took that to mean, oh, that means people don't want this version of the show. They want this version because this version sold like crazy, without taking without putting any research into think maybe those ones sold better because they cost like £15 each.
Right.
Whereas this good quality one you released, you charged an absurd price and also released it alongside various other releases at the same time. And now every time Funimation releases Dragon Ball Z on DVD or Blu-ray, they don't even try to actually put in the effort to make it a high quality release. They just go orange bricks, make some minor modifications, and then just say we did all these changes.
Yeah.
And that's basically been it for like 15 years, I think. I think the most recent release of Dragon Ball Z was exactly the same thing again. There is a video online basically detailing the troubled history of Dragon Ball Z being released on home media. I don't understand why Funimation does this. Because it's weird. One of the key things that they mention in their advertising for the whenever they re-release the show on Blu-ray, the key sticking point they mention is like in like a 3:4 aspect ratio.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually is happening, because the original show is in 4:3 aspect ratio, what they're doing is they're not actually restoring the image to that size. What they're doing is they're taking the image of the orange bricks release and cropping it to that size. Because for whatever reason, the orange bricks, when they were released, they cropped the image down to a different size, so that part of the image is completely cut off, so you're not seeing the whole image when watching. And so any newer releases, whenever they say that the show is now the show is in 4:3 aspect ratio, they're right they're correct in the idea that it's in 4:3, but it's not. The full image isn't visible. They're just cropping it to that size.
Yeah.
So you're still losing image regardless. And now that annoying part of the series that you basically always have to mention when talking about Dragon Ball, at least the home media releases of the series, it's incredibly weird because early Dragon Ball, GT, and everything else except Dragon Ball Z gets a perfectly fine release. I don't understand why. It's very strange. Obviously, Dragon Ball's probably not the only franchise to suffer this issue. I'm sure there are multiple other franchises that also have like releases that the company says is like a specific thing, but then when you actually watch it, it's not that, or it's like a low quality version. There is, in fact, I will point out there is a Dragon Ball multiverse, but that came much later, and it's not really the same as other multiverses. It's kind of different. It's also Dragon Ball makes a distinction between between alternate timelines and alternate universes. So during the original run of Dragon Ball, during the Android saga, or Android/Cell saga, basically the whole plot of that storyline is a kid from the future who is the child of one of the main characters of the present time, travels back in time to try and stop his future from becoming a post-apocalypse. Well, from humanity from being completely wiped out by machines, and so he comes back to try and stop that from happening. Because his initial plan, because obviously, the kid's name is Trunks, and he's the child of two characters named Vegeta and Bulma. Vegeta's a villain turned hero from earlier in the show, and then Bulma's a character who's been in the show from the very beginning. But yeah, so Trunks comes back in time to prevent the main character Goku from dying of a heart virus that will, because with Goku dead, all the other characters will then shortly die as well, because obviously Goku's the strongest member of the group, and so everyone else will end up dying off as well, with Goku not there to help them. And so Trunks comes back in time. I think it's like 15 or 20 years, I think. He comes back to like give medicine to Goku so that he doesn't die of a heart virus. And he then his whole goal was to once Goku's fine, to then travel back to his future, and I believe it's travel back to his future and help him stop the androids of the future from further destroying the world. Okay, no, that's the Frieza saga. Yeah, so, you're probably noticing a similarity in the plot line.
Yeah.
That is not a coincidence. That is very much intentional. The similarity. Oh yeah, that's Trunks. Yeah. So this story is very similar to Terminator. Although instead of it being a whole bunch of machines destroying humanity, it's just two androids. Because obviously in Dragon Ball, character strength is kind of absurd, or becomes very absurd over time. Because in Dragon Ball, training and putting the effort and training and fighting strong opponents makes you stronger. So technically, any human being in Dragon Ball could possibly grow to be like really strong if they just put in the training and put in the work. Because that's an aspect of. I've just noticed the other tab's gone. Yeah, so where was it? Yeah, that's kind of an aspect of Dragon Ball, is that anyone can. Okay, I'm not meant to see that yet. That anyone can put in like the training and the work and like become just as strong as the main characters. But most humans don't actually do that, because most humans are lazy and rely on machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, also in this franchise, morality is very black and white. So the good guys are good and the bad guys are bad. There's not much room for a moral grey area. There is a little bit of a moral grey area, but that comes much later in like the newer series, in the newer show. Yeah, so something about Goku himself is he is what is called an Eastern martial arts hero. I'm kind of curious if you know what that means.
No, I guess I kind of always thought that all martial arts heroes were Eastern.
Yeah, so the specific style, like Eastern hero or Eastern martial arts hero, they're kind of the same thing, but the differences are very minor. But yeah, essentially, an Eastern martial arts hero is like, say, like with someone like Superman or Batman, like they like fight evil and fight or fight just evil in general to defend like innocent people, and that's mostly how we would view like a Western hero.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like a Western or with an Eastern hero like Goku, most Eastern heroes don't actually necessarily fight to defend like the innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the safety of innocent people is a concern, but that's not necessarily a priority when fighting. Because most Eastern heroes fight with the intention of improving themselves during battle, or using the battle to then improve themselves or better themselves. So most Eastern heroes won't seek out won't fight bad guys or seek out bad guys
Mm-hmm.
with the intention of defending people, but rather with the intention of bettering themselves. It kind of sounds selfish in a way, but I don't think it is. I think it's a kind of a matter of perspective.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like the paladin going and calling out the dragon uh, that is just not doing anything, just sitting on his uh, pile of treasure. But you are an evil dragon. It is my job to dispatch you because of the evil you've done in the past and the evil you may do in the future.
yeah,
And I'll take all the glory for it.
yeah. So most Eastern heroes, sometimes there will be like Eastern heroes who like thrive on who will be excited for a battle itself, or will be like anticipating a battle if they know one is coming. So, and that is also the same with Goku. He will like if innocent people are in danger, he will do something to prevent that, but he's not going to be actively like if he sees like a bad guy attacking a city, he will like go up to stop him, but he will have the defending the innocent people will be in the back of his mind, but it won't be his primary reason for going up and fighting the bad guy, and also stopping him from destroying a city. Because there are some battles where that are in like a city area, and where Goku will actually ask the bad guy in question if they can move to a more secluded area where there isn't any innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
So he pays attention to the safety of innocent people, but it's not really his primary concern. It's just a detail that's in the back of his mind. Because like there are multiple points throughout the series where Goku does like does think about the safety of innocent people, but he's not really. He's more focused on getting like a good fight and
Mm-hmm.
bettering himself. He will also more often than not let the villains live because he has a philosophy of defeating the enemy, letting them live so that they can then learn from that defeat and then start bettering themselves. No, obviously as villains go, not all of them do that because like instances like say Vegeta or Piccolo who started out as villains, after Goku defeats them and then lets them live, lets them lets them go wherever they want. He is concerned about like them start attacking people, but most of the time he knows that those specific bad guys aren't going to start attacking people. Most of the time, the villains he defeats are probably just going to go straight for him. So he doesn't really see it as much of a problem to let them live, mostly because he believes that by defeating them, they have then been given some kind of perspective and will start changing for the better. Because that's kind of the effect Goku has on characters. Because there are multiple storylines where Goku defeats the enemy, lets them live, and then at a certain point later, they then become good people. In fact, multiple of the side characters around Goku, multiple of them started out as bad guys to some degree that then became good after their interaction with Goku. I think his best friend Krillin is probably the lightest example of a character being bettered by his interaction with Goku, because Krillin wasn't a bad guy, but he was a jerk at the start of the show.
Yeah.
At the start of the and that when you first introduced to Krillin, he's not evil, but he is a jerk. So after training with Goku for a while, they then start to become friends, and obviously that bond is strong. It becomes stronger over the course of the series itself. And you have more, and you have other examples like, say, Yamcha from the beginning of the show. He was a desert bandit whose intention was just to kill whoever came through his desert and take their stuff, purely for his own survival as well. And when he encountered Goku, someone who actually was strong enough to actually challenge him, at first Yamcha was like trying to get revenge by sneaking up to Goku and killing him, but that didn't work when he tried to sneak up on them. But his primary Yamcha's primary weakness is he, like, early on in the show, he is afraid of women, and like that's like one of the things he wants is to get rid of that fear of women. And like whenever a female character is like around or near him that he can see, he's like paralyzed and can't really do anything. And there's actually a really funny part of this. Where is it? I'm probably gonna have to put my finger over the this specific part because the manga is uncensored.
I would imagine.
Yeah, the manga is censored, but the anime is censored while the manga is not. But yeah, there's a part where they're hiding in a trait like a mobile home, and the female character Bulma, like, specifically she's gone into a different room to take a shower, and Yamcha is outside. He doesn't know anything. He just knows they're inside this. He just knows they're inside the mobile home, and his intention was to sneak up to there, scope out the area, see where everyone is, and then sneak in while they're asleep and kill them, and then take their stuff. And I think at some point during this, he learns of the Dragon Balls themselves, and then decides to So he's outside. He's crawling underneath a window. He thinks that the window he's going to look into is one where Goku and one other character is hiding. So he's so he's right there.
Oh.
Obviously, my finger is covering the bruise, and then he then looks in, completely unaware this is what's in the actual window he's going to look through. Looks through, and then is completely shocked and terrified because it's actually Bulma not wearing any clothes in front of the window. Yeah, and then he's like ashamed of himself, and he like decides to just wander off and come back at a later time.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, but yeah, at some point during that, he learns that they have these things called Dragon Balls, which is the name of the show. Was what the show's named after. I probably should have explained this first, but the Dragon Balls are small little they're small orange, I want to say glass, but they're probably not made of glass because they're very durable. But yeah, small orange glass balls with a star inside, with a different number of stars inside them, and there's 7 of them in total. And once you gather all 7, you can then call the dragon Shinron to then grant you a wish, kind of like a genie.
Sure.
And basically, you can wish for whatever you want. I think the only limits are you can't wish for something that is more powerful than the dragon itself.
Makes
And
sense.
I think there's another limitation. I think it was you can't wish. I want to say you can't wish for someone to kill someone, but I think you can wish that. I know that the only limitation I remember off the top of my head is that you can't wish for something more powerful than the dragon itself. But yeah, basically the Dragon Ball itself, well, the Dragon Balls themselves they're scattered all over the world. By the start of the series, Goku himself has one of the Dragon Balls, but he doesn't know what it is or what it does. He just sees it as because it's the 4-star Dragon Ball. He just sees it as a thing that his grandfather his grandfather had. That I think early on in the show, Goku assumes that his grandfather's soul is in the Dragon Ball, but it's not.
Mm.
So early on, he's talking to the Dragon Ball as if it is his grandfather.
Oh.
Because at an earlier point, Goku's grandfather died mysteriously, and it's just like because it was just him and his grandfather living out in the woods. And yeah, so Goku's like very protective of the 4-star ball. So when the character of Bulma, when she comes to Goku, because she has a radar that she designed that specifically locates where Dragon Balls are, and she's trying to gather up all 7 of them, specifically so she can wish for a boyfriend. And that is not a joke. That is actually her wish. Yeah, and she kind of convinces Goku to let her have the 4-star ball, but obviously Goku holds on to it during the actual journey to claim all 7. And obviously, while this is happening, a villain named Emperor Pilaf is also searching for the Dragon Balls because he wants to use them to wish for world conquest.
Oh.
And yeah, the obviously during this whole storyline, this early storyline, at some point, Yamcha starts helping Goku and Bulma, and I think the other character is named Oolong, who's a humanoid pig who can shapeshift.
Okay.
Yeah, he can shapeshift because he went to a school that specifically taught him that ability. And one character that hangs around Yamcha is a small flying cat named Poir, who can also transform, and she also went to the same school that Oolong went to. Yeah, Dragon Ball does not take place in like the real. Well, it takes place on Earth, but not the real world Earth. It's more of a fantasy Earth.
Sure.
Because like you have the cities that are high tech, futuristic with flying cars and like they're very like that very like sci-fi concept of like suspended tunnels and flying cars and that sort of thing. Whereas outside of the city, it's more of a like medieval fantasy land.
Sure.
It's kind of mixed. It's both like advanced, high concept sci-fi and also medieval fantasy at the same time. But yeah, where was I? Yeah, so at some point, Yamcha started helping Goku and Bulma retrieve the Dragon Balls. Obviously, once he learned of the Dragon Balls, he then decided to take the Dragon Balls from them and use the wish to remove his fear of women.
Mm-hmm.
But while he was helping them, obviously he was secretly planning to kill them and take the Dragon Balls once everything was done. But over the course of the show, over the course of that early storyline, he starts to become more friendly towards them and starts to more genuinely be trying to help them rather than secretly trying to betray them. And yeah, this ends when the villain Emperor Pilaf captures all of them and takes their Dragon Balls. I think except for the 4-star that Goku has. Because obviously Bulma had all the other ones that they'd collected at that point, and then Goku had the 4-star ball. So Pilaf didn't have all of them, and he was trying to he was like keeping them prisoner to try and question them and figure out where the Dragon Ball is, and none of them would tell him. So he decided to lock them in a metal cage or metal container where all of the walls are metal except the roof, where it's a glass roof, well, a reinforced glass roof that can't be broken. And his whole plan is, because they're not telling him, he'll just leave them in there overnight until it turns daytime, and then have the sunlight shining down, basically cook them alive in there.
Mm-hmm.
And during the night, Goku looks up at the moon and transforms into a giant gorilla, or a giant tailed gorilla. And that is
Because that's
influenced
something
by
that happens, yeah.
yeah. It's actually funny because he looks up at the moon. He doesn't immediately transform. He's in like a trance, and all the characters are confused as to why he's looking at the moon. And then he starts turning into a giant tail, like gorilla with a tail, and starts smashing up the castle that they're in. And I think they're initially happy that they're out of the cage, but they're also like when Goku's transforming and the cage starts breaking as he's growing. At first, they were relieved that they're now free, but they're also absolutely terrified because Goku is a giant rampaging gorilla that has no distinction between ally or enemy whatsoever, and so he's just attacking anyone. Yeah, and there is actually a reason for him turning into a gorilla, or a giant gorilla. That's because he's a Saiyan, and that's a specific thing that Saiyans can do. Because as long as they have a tail, when they look up at the moon, they can then transform into a great ape. Obviously, they have no control over this. Although some characters like Vegeta, who's also a Saiyan, he can control when he's turned into a great ape. He can control himself. But I think that's through him training, and I think he also mentioned something about him being of like a higher breed of Saiyan or something like. Because obviously he's a prince, so he has all kinds of special training. Yeah, although I'm going to point out the detail with the Saiyans didn't come up in early Dragon Ball. In early Dragon Ball, Goku was just a really strong human, or at least everyone just assumed he was a really strong human. The whole detail with the Saiyan came later in the series. At the very start of the Dragon Ball Z portion of the story, it's then revealed that Goku is an alien from another planet. Although, funnily enough, before that, there are some instances of characters making the guess that he might be an alien, but they never make it. Obviously, these moments weren't Toriyama planting the seed for what would come later, because Toriyama doesn't write like that. He writes as he goes. He doesn't plan out too that far in the future. So most of the instances of characters, either characters or something in the series identifying Goku as an alien, isn't a planting the seed. That's just the characters just assuming he must be an alien given how strong he is and how unusual he is. Yeah, there are also multiple points in the series where Goku's tail is cut off as well.
Ouch.
Most of the time his tail is cut off because he turns into a great ape, and cutting off his tail will transform him back to human. Obviously, the other method of turning back is just waiting until the sun comes up, and he'll just turn back normally. Well, he'll just naturally turn back. But in most situations, when he turns into a great ape, they don't have the time to wait until morning. Yeah, so okay, this clip I shall show you. Hopefully, the audio works. So this is from like a 2013 Dragon Ball movie called Battle of the Gods, and obviously I'm jumping around a bit here, but this specific clip, I'm not going to show you the whole 17-minute thing, but this specific moment kind of illustrates an aspect of Goku's character, and this is probably the best method I could do this, other than because I didn't want to just explain it. I would rather just show you the clip and let that little bit speak for itself. I think it's sort of like about a minute.
Yes, good. Now you're getting.
Wait, can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear the sound.
Okay, good.
What's the matter? You seem disappointed.
Honestly, yeah.
Why? Don't you like being a deity?
It's not the power. It's what it took to get it and what that means.
I don't think I follow you.
It's a level of strength I can't reach on my own.
And that limit disturbs you.
Yeah.
What is that? An earthquake? You say such interesting things, Saiyan. Don't you happen to have friends willing to help you become a god?
Yeah, of course I am. But it's not my strength. I spent my life pushing myself to be the strongest, and now I learn there's a power level I'll never reach on my own. And I hate that.
If that's so, then why did you agree to do it?
Because at least this way I have a chance to beat you.
Well, you seem to be addicted to battle.
I get that a lot.
Okay, I think that's.
Yeah.
I don't think any more of the clip actually details like parts of Goku's character. It's just that one short bit there. Hopefully that illustrates an aspect of Goku's character.
Yeah, I get the idea.
I'd imagine that would illustrate it better than I could explain it.
It's like these Saiyans are on a quest to just better themselves and become the best they can be.
Actually, that's a detail. Saiyans, it's not specific to Saiyans. It's more of a specific to Goku.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously when he was trained by so early in Dragon Ball, like the early Dragon Ball, Goku runs into an old man named Master Roshi, who trains Goku trains him in martial arts. Mm-hmm. Obviously, before he finds Master Roshi, he had already been trained by his grandpa to some extent. So he already had like that desire to improve his abilities. But when he came across Master Roshi, and then Master Roshi trained him, after Goku brought him a beautiful woman to walk across the beach with, that is not a joke. That is literally what Master Roshi's prerequisite was for training Goku. Yeah, Master Roshi's a pervert. He's literally always watching aerobics videos. Because obviously this is the late 80s, early 90s.
Sure.
So no internet, no porn, so aerobics videos it is. It's actually very funny. Most of the time it's used for comedic effect.
I would imagine.
But yeah, Master Roshi trains Goku in martial arts, or trains him further in martial arts. But he also tries to implant the idea of Goku of what was it? Because obviously, after the first storyline of Dragon Ball, I think it's called the Emperor Pilaf saga. Mm-hmm. After that arc, once the Dragon Balls have been collected and the dragon is summoned, and then they grant the wish. And the Dragon Balls basically then they disperse across the world and turn to stone, and then stay in that state for a year. And they're basically inactive for that year, and they can't be tracked with the radar. So Goku decides to go back to Master Roshi, and train under him, and specifically train for an upcoming tournament called the World Martial Arts Tournament. I believe it's the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. And basically they start training for that tournament, and once the tournament is over, then the Dragon Balls have become active again, because obviously the training took like at least a year, and Goku starts going out and looking for the Dragon Balls again. Well, he doesn't look for all of them, he only looks for the 4-star ball, because that's his grandpa's ball. But yeah, during the training for the World Martial Arts Tournament, Master Roshi trains him in martial art, and also trains Krillin. He also teaches him maths and English, because Goku's very dumb. Yeah, this early part of Goku, he's very dumb. Obviously, he gets smarter as the series goes on, but not by much. Like, obviously, Goku's a genius when it comes to fighting and battle tactics and that sort of thing. But when it comes to literally everything else, he's basically a complete idiot. It's actually funny because early on in the series, he has no like distinction between man and woman. He has to literally go up and touch them in order to figure out if they're male or female. And of course, this gets him into trouble, as you would expect.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, there have been multiple points when he's literally just gone up to someone and just patted them on the crotch and go, "Oh, hey, you're a guy," or he's like, or he's like gone up and patted someone on the crotch and go, "Oh, you're not a guy, you're a woman." And of course, the person in question gets very angry with him and hits him, or in Bulma's case, pulls out a machine gun and shoots him. Yeah. Although, given how even early in the series, Goku is very durable, and he can actually take being shot at. Most of the time, it's played for comedic effect, and most of the time, him being shot is more of just a like similar to being stung by a bee.
Yeah.
Because literally the very first thing we see of Bulma and Goku's interaction is Goku being run over by Bulma's car and then like lifting it over his head and throwing it a short distance away, and Bulma being completely confused as to what's going on because she wasn't expecting that to happen. So her response is to climb out of the car and shoot Goku in the face with a gun. Yeah, really. Yeah, there it is. She shoots him in the face, and he just gets up and is just like in pain, but doesn't actually do anything. That's something that's present with the different characters in Dragon Ball. Is once they are at a certain strength, bullets just don't do anything to them. And obviously that becomes more apparent much later in the series when they're like absurdly powerful.
Yeah.
I think one character named Majin Buu, his like body is like Play-Doh, so when characters are shooting at him, the bullets just sink into him like a Looney Tunes cartoon almost. But yeah, okay, now I've completely forgotten where my initial train of thought was. Oh yeah, once Goku trained with Master Roshi, after teaching him maths and English, also tried to implant like the message of not using his martial arts skills and his strength for personal benefit, like trying to teach him to use his martial arts skills. Well, I think he says something about like he doesn't necessarily tell Goku and Krillin to like defend innocent people with their strength and martial arts skills, but rather to not actively try and like attack people and use their strength and power to benefit themselves. Oh, there's Goku as a giant monkey.
Just cause.
Yeah, there's him when he's turned into a giant monkey. Where's the? There's Roshi watching aerobics videos.
There you go.
Yeah. Where is it? Oh, yeah. There is also a lot of whenever the different instances of Master Roshi, like, oh, here's okay, so when Goku's going to train with Master Roshi, here is Roshi holding a picture of a beautiful woman and basically telling Goku to bring him a beautiful woman like that. And then Goku gets on his flying Nimbus, which is a cloud that you can only ride on if you're pure of heart. And if you're not pure of heart, you fall right through it. Yeah, and I believe in the... Yeah, so initially Goku comes back with this woman right here, who... Not that bad. Obviously, his intention is to like walk along the beach with her and have a romantic evening. And there's Master Roshi's nosebleed upon seeing her.
Because his blood pressure goes up.
Yeah, that's actually a really common thing in animes for when a perverted character sees like an attractive woman, they just get nosebleed. Sometimes only a little bit, and then other times an exaggerated amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he goes up to this woman and asks her if she would like to walk along the beach with him, and then it's revealed what Goku brought back was a mermaid.
Oh.
So Master Roshi's like disappointed because she can't walk along the beach because she's a mermaid, and he basically goes up to Goku. Oh, there's a yeah. After that, he then attempts to like get very close to her boobs, like
Of course.
I think motorboat or something, or whatever it specifically is. I don't quite remember. And just because when he asks her that, she then hits him across the head with her tail, and then swims back into the ocean. And it's at this point that then Krillin comes in. This is where Krillin comes in, and he knows exactly what Master Roshi is about. So because he's done his research on Master Roshi, he requests to train with Roshi, and he's like carrying a bag. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, he carrying a bag. He asks Master Roshi to train him, and he then opens the bag and pulls out a whole bunch of adult magazines and presents them to Roshi. So there's immediately a difference between Krillin and Goku. Goku's like kind of an idiot, but like pure of heart, and then Krillin's like definitely not pure of heart and just just bribes Roshi with porn magazines. Yeah, so actually, now I think about it, the whole detail with Goku being pure of heart is actually where else is it? Actually, it might be this one. So during so here's one detail. This is a character. What is that? Yeah, this character right here is I've actually forgotten his name. He's like very clearly Native American, but yeah, this guy is killed during the Red Ribbon Army saga because a really powerful mercenary has been hired by the Red Ribbon Army to retrieve the Dragon Balls from Goku and obviously kill Goku. And during this time, Goku then during this when this guy is killed and leaves his young son alone, Goku then promises the guy's son to that he'll collect the rest of the Dragon Balls and use them to wish his father back to life. Yeah, no, wish his father back to life. And obviously, over the course of the story, he collects the rest of the Dragon Balls, and then I think before he finds the last one, the very end of the Red Ribbon Army saga, he then is unable to find the last Dragon Ball. So what he does is he goes to I'm sure you'll like this bit, and you'll see why in a minute. The Goku goes to Master Roshi's sister, who's named Fortune Teller Baba, and she basically does she has a crystal ball that she looks into, and whatever is asked, or whatever the person wants, she then looks into the crystal ball and basically shows them how to get that thing. in this case, they want to use it to locate the last Dragon Ball. Yeah, but when they actually go there, there's actually a whole bunch of people here that there's a whole bunch of people here waiting to see Baba, obviously for their own, obviously to ask her for whatever it is they want. I don't think any of the other guys that are already here say what they're even like specifically here for. But yeah, so while Goku, Krillin, and Yamcha, they travel to this place, and before Baba will let them use her crystal ball to locate the last Dragon Ball, she puts them through like a mini tournament where they fight like her champions. I think it's because they don't have any money, and normally Baba's services are paid for, but because they don't have any money, and she notices their martial arts, so instead she says they can instead pay by fighting some of her toughest champions. And I'm sure you'll I'm sure you'll like the oh Jesus Christ, there's too much dust in here. Oh. Okay, I think I'm
okay
fine now.
Okay.
I should have brought up a glass of water or something.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, there is a. I really should dust the top of on top of these like Dragon Ball volumes. Well, I should just do that more regularly than I do. Yeah. So basically, while Goku, Yamcha, and Krillin are here, fortune teller Baba's little mini tournament, she basically calls out her like 5 champions to fight, or to fight Goku or fight these guys. And if Goku and the rest can defeat these, then they get like one free. They get to use Fortune Teller Baba's a crystal ball like once for free, and the first champion to come out to face them, he's a vampire bat, or specifically a vampire. I'm sure you can guess which popular vampire is being referenced here.
I mean, yeah. I'm assuming Dracula.
Yep. And with that, you can possibly guess who the next couple of champions are.
Van Helsing?
Not any of the good guys from. So yeah, Krillin fights Dracula, and and Krillin defeats Dracula by I think at an earlier point I think Krillin had eaten garlic, so he had garlic in his blood. Obviously, Krillin didn't intentionally plan this. Right. He just happened to have previously eaten garlic beforehand. So when Dracula tries drinking his blood, he then like jumps back. He then like jumps back from this and decides, you know what, I'm not going to drink this guy's blood. I'm just going to punch him instead.
Yeah.
I think there's even another part where Yamcha's flying cat Pua decides to like help Krillin, along with the Native American guy's kid. I think the kid's name is Upa, I think. The two of them decide to like help Oh no, wait, it's Upa who uses garlic. He eats the garlic and then breathes it on Dracula to try and. And Upa also stands in a T pose to emulate a cross.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And also, Poir uses her shape-shifting powers to turn into a hedgehog right before Dracula bites her, so he ends up biting a hedgehog.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yes, these 4 panels here. Yeah, so yeah, it's right there. I don't know if you can see that well. Yeah, he stands in a T-pose to emulate a cross,
Yeah.
and then Dracula flies away in fear, and then Poir turns and transforms into a giant hand and smacks him in the water. And because he landed outside of the ring, he then loses. And then it's Yamcha's turn. Then it's because obviously each fighter goes in turns. So once one is defeated, the next fighter on both sides comes out. So with Krillin being disqualified for like being bitten and bleeding a whole bunch and passing out, and then obviously Poir and Upa stepping in to take Dracula on instead or in his place.
Mm-hmm.
They then leave the fighting area, and Yamcha steps in to fight the next guy. And the next guy is he's there somewhere. I think he's like here. I think.
Yeah.
Yes. And Yamcha is confused. Like Yamcha is confused by the fact that his opponent isn't there, but his opponent actually is there. His opponent's an Invisible Man. Yeah, one thing I'll point out: Toriyama is actually a fan of multiple Western movies. So throughout his manga, he sprinkles in references to Western movies that he likes. Sure. So in this case, it's the Universal monsters. So the first one is Dracula, then the Invisible Man. I actually really like the way that they figure out how to defeat the Invisible Man. Because he's invisible, so Yamcha can't actually hit him. He has to rely on listening to the Invisible Man's footsteps,
mm-hmm.
and trying to anticipate where he'll be by using that. But then Barbara starts making a whole bunch of noise to throw Yamcha off. She even explains that her making a whole bunch of noise isn't necessarily interfering, because she's not directly involving herself in the fight. She's simply making a bunch of noise, so she's technically not interfering, even though she is.
Yeah.
As you can see, Barbara is not necessarily fair in these fights.
Right.
Yeah. So Goku flies off to grab Master Roshi, because Krillin asked him to fly off and grab Master Roshi. Master Roshi and Bulma. And Krillin, once they're back there, I think Krillin then says to Master Roshi that he wants Roshi to watch Yamcha's fight and just see how he's doing and everything. Because at this point, Yamcha is studying under Master Roshi as well, so he's one of Roshi's students as well. And the reason he's brought Bulma is he positions Roshi and Bulma in a specific position, so Bulma's has her back to the arena itself, so she can't see what's going on. And he's got positioned Roshi opposite Bulma, facing towards the actual fight itself. And he waits until the fight itself is in a very specific position, and he pulls down Bulma's top so her boobs are exposed. Master Roshi is then shot by it because he can see it, bleeds a whole bunch, and it goes right onto the Invisible Man, making him visible. And then Yamcha is then able to defeat him, which I do find very funny, because then Bulma kicks the crap out of Krillin for that. Because every time something like that happens, part of the comedy is for Oh yeah, and you also have Master Roshi like congratulating Krillin
Yeah.
on the tactics, obviously, not any other reason. Yeah, so the Invisible Man and then the next fight moves to a different area. This very cool twin devil statue above molten sewage, I think. What was this place called? I think this place had a some kind of, not necessarily molten, but like, I know somewhere in here they actually explain what this place is called. Oh, that's it. The Devil's Cesspool is what it's called. This arena is called. And if I'm correct, yep. Okay, the next champion to come out is Bandages the Mummy.
Mm.
I believe in the Japanese version he's just called the Mummy. I think in the dub of the anime they call him Bandages the Mummy, but I think originally his name is literally just the Mummy. Yeah, and I'm not going to bother going through the whole fights because I mean multiple of the fights are really cool, but it's not necessarily too important. So after the Mummy is defeated, the next contestant to come, or the next champion to come out, is the Devil. Or in the dub they call him Spike, the Devil Man, but I think in this he's just called Devil. Oh no, yeah, he's literally just called the Devil in this. I think some versions call him Devil Man, and then others just call him the Devil. And then obviously the dub of the anime calls him Spike, the Devil Man. Mm-hmm. And he actually has a very powerful attack called the Devil Might Beam that basically, once it hits its opponent, it then takes takes all the evil inside that person and expands it out until the person explodes. And yeah, this is a very powerful attack because obviously this is something that will be incredibly useful against someone who is absolutely pure evil. Mm-hmm. But obviously, Devilman is fighting, or Devil is fighting Goku. He uses the attack on Goku, and like for a moment or two, Goku is like lit up by the attack, and he's like paralyzed for a moment by the attack, and then it passes, and he's like confused as to what's going on, and the attack then just doesn't do anything because Goku's pure of heart, and he has no evil in him, so the attack does no damage to him. And the Devil's just completely confused and baffled by the fact that there's no evil in Goku, and his attack does nothing. Although weirdly enough, in the manga, the Devil uses the attack only once, and then when he realizes it doesn't work, he pulls out his pitchfork and starts attacking Goku with that. Although in the anime, for some reason, they have like multiple moments where the Devil uses the Devil Might Be multiple times. For some reason, I would assume the anime staff did that to pad out the episode length, because that is something that I know that anime tends to do I suppose any show does now and then, where they repeat scenes to pad out the episode length.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so so the Dragon Ball movies, fun fact, they're actually still making Dragon Ball movies.
Wow. In
fact, the most recent Dragon Ball movie was last year. It was Dragon Ball Superhero. And I think one of the actual reasons that Dragon Ball, because obviously in the early 2000s, Japan wasn't really making Dragon Ball content anymore. Neither was Akira Toriyama. He sort of, after he finished writing the manga, he then just stopped. He didn't make any other mangas, or he didn't make any more Dragon Ball material for a while. He was basically retired. He's basically retired from that point onwards, and also he's providing character designs to like various games like Dragon Quest and also Chrono Trigger. He did the character designs for that game, and yeah. So essentially, Toriyama has basically been mostly on the behind the scenes level. He's still in control of Dragon Ball, but he's not really involved too heavily in any specific part of the franchise anymore. But he's yeah. So after he finished the manga and the anime stuff made GT, Toriyama wasn't involved with that show. He did do like a couple design. He did design some of the villains for that show, but outside of that, he didn't really involve himself in the show's development outside of that. And then after GT finished, Toriyama only really provided designs for like for a couple of TV specials and and various game original characters. In fact, that's mostly been Toriyama's position in Dragon Ball overall since the early 2000s, is providing designs and also giving Toei and actually okay, so basically he gives designs and story outlines to the anime staff, and then the shonen, well, a guy called Toyotaru, who's writing the Dragon Ball manga that's currently going, or the Dragon Ball Super manga that's currently being made. And yeah, Toriyama essentially either provides character designs, mostly for movies or for games or some kind of special or something like that, and also providing story outlines for then anime staff and Toyotaru to follow. Although there is a detail where they don't have to stick strictly to Toriyama's story outline. They can deviate in certain areas if they want to. Yeah. So obviously that's the current state of Dragon Ball and Toriyama's involvement. But yeah, from the early 2000s, he only really worked on, had limited involvement in Dragon Ball productions after he'd finished writing the manga and the anime had finished. I think obviously early 2000s, there were a couple of TV specials and also a re-edited version of the original Dragon Ball Z manga called Dragon Ball Kai. Obviously, the Kai is basically designed to be a more manga accurate version of the show with all the filler edited out. Although not all of the filler is edited out, because there are some parts where the filler is like a part of an important scene that's from the manga, so you kind of have to leave that in. Otherwise, you would have to just completely cut out the part from the manga, just reanimate that. And the anime staff didn't want to do that. They only wanted to cut out the episodes and parts of the episodes that are filler, and because of that, some parts couldn't be removed. So there's a tiny bit of filler still in Kai, but it is more manga accurate overall. So yeah, Kai was running in like 2009, I think, and essentially those were the only things that were available. I think it was a special called Yosen Goku and His Friends Return, which I think Toriyama actually wrote that one, I think. Probably shouldn't quote me on that, but I think he wrote that one. He did provide the character designs for the villains of that special. And of course, there's like hundreds upon hundreds of Dragon Ball Z games. I think there's like over 200 games. I have some of those games, but not all of them. Because obviously a lot of them are Japanese exclusive and haven't been brought outside of Japan.
Sure.
Which is very annoying when that happens. Right. But nothing I can do about that. Yeah, so but there is one thing that happened, not necessarily in the early 2000s, I think in the late 2000s, that marked a shift for Dragon Ball. And that's the release of the live-action American movie, Dragon Ball Evolution, which is an absolutely horrendous movie that
I was just going to say, I've never even I did not know there was anything live action at all. So,
Yeah, yeah, it was made by Fox
oh
because
god,
Fox have the distribution rights for Dragon Ball, or
I
they used to before Disney bought Fox.
yeah.
Fox had the
When was
distribution
this?
rights for
When was this movie made?
the movie. I want to say it was 2008, 2007. Hold on, let
Oh,
me open
okay.
up IMDb. I think it was like around that time. Possibly 2009 was when that movie came out, maybe.
My gosh.
I'll tell you in a minute. Yeah, the movie is not in any way accurate to Dragon Ball.
So, in other words, it's kind of like the Doctor Who movie from '96 with Paul McGann, or maybe not even that good.
No, I wouldn't say that. Try making a Star Wars movie. Actually, no, make a Star Trek movie,
Uh huh.
but make the but have every element of the movie be based on Star Wars, but still call it Star Trek.
Oh, so in other words, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. Okay, I get you.
Yeah, yeah. The movie only like very, very vaguely resembles Dragon Ball. Like I would reckon if you squint like incredibly hard, then maybe it will look like the anime and manga.
Yeah.
Because the movie itself, it basically takes place in a modern. Oh, it's 2009 is when the film came out. Yeah, the movie essentially adapts the King Piccolo saga. For some reason, it adapts that specific storyline as the first, because it's like it's combining the start of Dragon Ball with like the King Piccolo saga, which came out which is multiple storylines later, and it's like fusing the two together. And it's also so yeah, the villain is King Piccolo. There are various other characters in the movie that are from the manga and anime, but like don't look like them in the slightest.
Yeah.
And then the main character Goku in the film barely looks like Goku. Like he has spiky hair, but it's not in Goku's very distinctive spiky like the style of Goku's very
Right.
distinctive hair.
Chances I expect it's probably like you have an animated character like Bart Simpson, and they decide to make him look realistic, like with an actor playing him. So, you know, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily get Bart
And yeah,
Simpson.
and make his hair spiky, but not in the same way that it is in the cartoon.
Exactly. Exactly.
Where is it? Oh, yeah, this is a. I was about to share the screen for a moment so I could, because I was looking for a specific image where you can actually, where you can like see Goku's hair, like. Oh, God damn it! Okay, that'll do. This is Goku's hair. Very distinctive, wouldn't you say?
Right. Right.
In the movie, it doesn't. His hair doesn't look like this in the slightest. His hair's just kind of spiky and like sticking upwards.
Yeah.
And they even have this strange detail in the film where Goku tries like slicking his hair back with grease, and his hair like resists and flicks the
Right.
grease off of his hair and goes back to being spiky, which is
So in
not a
other
thing
words,
that Goku.
this
Yeah,
is
what
the
were you
kind
gonna
of
say?
thing where the creators want to poke fun at the stylized anime style.
Yeah, yeah, because Goku's like hair, how Saiyan hair works in the manga and anime is it stays exactly the same regardless of how much time has passed or how old they are. They have the exact same hairstyle their entire life. It just doesn't grow.
Yeah.
I think it grows a little. I think it grows a little bit when they're young, but then when they're an adult, it just not growing. It doesn't grow anymore, and their hair stays exactly the same. Their hair can be cut or like you can manipulate their hair in various ways. Their hair doesn't like resist like someone trying to like style it back or cut it off or something. because you can cut Saiyan hair. It's just it won't change whatsoever.
Right.
Although, interesting enough, Saiyan's facial hair actually does grow, so it is possible for Saiyans to grow beards and mustaches. I'm not sure why there's a difference there, or why only their hair on their head doesn't change, but then their facial hair does. Yeah, so also throughout Dragon Ball, there are various points when the series will skip forward a certain amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think throughout early Dragon Ball, time skips forward. I think 3 years I think 3 years, and at a later point it skips ahead only 1 year. Then I think it skips ahead another 3 years. Then at the end of then in between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, they skip forward like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then over different points in the story, they'll like mostly in between storylines is when they'll skip forward a certain amount of years. Yeah, so oh yeah, I just realized I didn't talk about the time travel part of Dragon Ball. So obviously the Future Trunks storyline with the whole androids and the future apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Ball's time travel, in relation to that, because that's when time travel was first used in Dragon Ball. How time travel works in Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball does make a distinction between alternate timelines and alternate dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the time travel in this series works on branching timelines. So when Trunks travels from his future to the present to try and try and alter his future, what ends up happening is he alters the future of the main timeline that he's traveling to, and his timeline that he's traveled from basically doesn't change. He's then able to then go back to his future timeline, and it's exactly the same. Nothing has changed. And when he goes back, he then realizes that him changing the past didn't actually affect his future.
Yeah.
So then he travels back again 3 years after he had initially traveled back. Well, he travels 3 years later to then help the gang in the present to fight the androids that he had warned them of in the 3 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the 3 years of the present time, when he actually returns to the present, he then goes off to try to find them. And when he finds them fighting androids, he then realizes they're actually fighting the wrong androids. Because obviously in his future there's only 2 androids, but because he's come back in time and altered the present, and thereby altering the future of the timeline that he's come to, that's resulted in various changes. So in his time there's only 2 androids, but in the present that he's come back to, there's actually more than 2 androids. There's actually 2 other androids that look nothing like the ones that he's been fighting, and he's completely confused by this when he finds them. Yeah, so and obviously at a later point we then find out that another android, or a bio android named Cell, had actually traveled back in time from a separate from a different branching timeline. So basically it's like Future Trunks' timeline, I think, is the original timeline, and him going back and changing the past then creates the timeline that you're actually watching in the anime itself. So it's like I think it's like the show that when you're watching the show, that's the primary timeline, but it's not the original timeline. The future that Trunks comes from is the original timeline, and then Cell comes from a third branching timeline of the original timeline, I think. I feel like with Dragon Ball's time travel, you kind of need like an explanation or like a flowchart.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably need to map it out.
Yeah, because it's like there's the main timeline that the show takes place in. There's the original timeline that Trunks comes from, and then there's a third timeline that Cell comes from, which I think in itself is a branch of the timeline after Trunks has already changed time. So basically, Trunks goes back in time to alter the past. Then he goes back to the future, and then he goes, then he comes back, helps the heroes or helps the gang defeat the androids. Then goes back to his future to then tell his mother that he was successful in his journey, and then from that timeline is where Cell then comes in, kills Trunks, takes his time machine, and goes back to, I think, before a few years before Trunks initially traveled back in time. So it's slightly strange that one of those time travel jumps creates a separate timeline, and then the other one branches off from that. I am also working off of off of my memory of how this is explained, so this probably isn't completely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So Dragon Ball's time travel works on. Well, I've heard people call this normal form of time travel a multiverse theory, but given that we have a different understanding of how a multiverse works, obviously because Dragon Ball distinguishes time travel as a separate thing from an alternate dimension.
Right.
So Dragon Ball itself takes place in Universe 7, and there is 12 universes in whole. All this information has come from the newer anime, so this wasn't in the original manga. So in the newer series, Dragon Ball Super, where basically the different levels of gods of basically there's different levels of gods in Dragon Ball, because at first you have the defender of, or the Earth's protector, who stays on a floating, well, I want to say a floating island, but it's not an island. It's like a floating bowl with a lid on it or something. It's like a floating platform called Kami's Lookout.
Mm-hmm.
I will point out Kami is Japanese for God. So and also the current guardian on the lookout is actually named Kami. So technically his name is God. It's weird because he's not actually a god. Like, his role, essentially, you could actually describe him as a god based on what his role and job is, but he's not a divine being.
Sure.
Well, I think he can sense divine beings, but I don't think he himself actually is a god. But based on the fact that his name means God, it's obviously clear what it's meant to imply about the character. But there's like multiple other levels of gods above him. So there's like the Kais, which are also gods. Actually, before that there's Kami. Then above him is King Yama, who's basically I suppose kind of like Hades in the way, where he judges souls and decides where they go in the afterlife. And yes, there's King Yama. Then above him is the Kais, and there's like 4 different Kais for each quadrant of the galaxy. So there's north, east, south, and west Kai for obviously those specific regions of the universe or of the galaxy. And well, not the galaxy, the universe. And then you have like a grand Kai above them, and then you've like multiple different levels. But yeah, so right at the very top is a being called Zeno, who's basically the supreme god. He basically can wipe out universes and erase people within an instant. With like, basically they wouldn't even know they were erased; they were just suddenly gone. And yeah, everyone around him is incredibly afraid to make him angry because they don't want him to erase them.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have like beings like gods of destruction, and it's actually kind of funny because in Dragon Ball Super, there's a moment where where Goku walks up to Zeno and shakes his hand, and everyone around him is absolutely petrified by this, because obviously no one else would dare just walk right up to the supreme god of the universe and shake his hand without even considering anything else, because obviously Goku is the kind of person who would do that, who wouldn't really consider anything other than just being nice to someone, just go up and just shake his hand.
Right.
So everyone else, like the gods of destruction, Zeno's guards, literally everyone around them is absolutely petrified when Goku does this, because they're like under the impression that if they tried doing that, then they would make Zeno mad and he would erase them. But obviously, in this instance, Zeno does not erase Goku for doing this. It is also played more for comedy, that moment. But yeah. So you have Zeno at the very top. He can erase universes whenever he wants, or for whatever reason he wants. He is mostly a good person. I think there was 18 universes in whole, but Zeno erased 6 of them, leaving only 12. And the current 12 universes, how they work is they operate in pairs. So pairs of universes are not necessarily mirror universes, but like they're reflections of each other. So Universe 7 is where the Dragon Ball manga takes place, and Universe 7 is paired, whereas Universe 7 and Universe 6 are reflections of each other. So Universe 6, it doesn't have, like, say, other versions of Goku and Vegeta, but rather instead has an alternate reality where some of the same planets and species exist. So in Universe 7, you have Saiyans and humans and Namekians. And in Universe 6, you also have Saiyans, humans, and Namekians. And they operate mostly the same with some minor differences. And then you have, like, the other universes, like, I think Universe 5 and... Yeah, I think Universe 5 and 8 are also mirrored. So it mirrors in pairs. So Universe 6 and 7 are mirrors. And then Universe, I think it's 5 and 8... Actually, hold on. Yeah, so it's 6 and 7, 5 and 8, 4 and 9, 3 and 10, 2 and 11, and then 1 and 12. And they're mirrored in that way. So those specific universes are mirrored of each other. And you have, like, say, like, each universe is completely separate from the other, except the one that it's a mirror of. So Universe 6 is completely different from universes 5 to the first 5, but it's completely different from every universe except Universe 7, where it's a mirror of. I don't think any other multiverse works this way. I think Dragon Ball is probably unique in this way. I think most other multiverses work on either something like the Marvel universe, where alternate timelines make up the multiverse,
yeah.
and then the DC option, where alternate Earths aren't necessarily altered. I don't know if DC makes a distinction between, like, other universes in the multiverse and other timelines.
I'm trying to think. In DC, I don't think they generally go with the time altering thing. They generally go with they are just separate alternate universes that may or may not be closely related.
Yeah.
And if you change time, you actually change time. You know.
Yeah, because I know it's like the Marvel does the whole thing where every alternate timeline is, like, completely separate from the main universe itself. It's like you have 616 as the main Marvel Earth, and then you have like the Guardians of the Galaxy from the year 3000. They're an alternate future, so they're separate. So they're, like, on a separate timeline, which is designated as a separate Earth in the multiverse. And you have, like, the Age of Apocalypse is a separate Earth, and Days of Future Past, and a whole bunch of and the Age of Ultron. I am now just noticing Marvel has a lot of Earths that are just alternate futures.
Yeah.
And at least 2 of them are alternate futures where the future is an apocalypse being destroyed by robots. Yeah, so the Dragon Ball has, like, more of a unique multiverse where it's like each universe is separate, but like at least two. But they're like some of them are like, well, 6 of them are mirrors of the other 6, or only specific ones. So Universe 7 is a mirror of Universe 7. Like 5 and 8 are only mirrors of each other and have no relation to all the other universes, and it's basically like that with all of them, with all the 12 that are left. You know, I was gonna like mention something, and oh yeah, that's it. Part of Goku's origin is that obviously we know he's a Saiyan, but this is probably going to sound very familiar to you. Goku, as a baby, was sent off of his planet shortly before his planet was then blown up. Obviously, it didn't blow up just randomly. It was actively destroyed by another character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the details are the same. Goku is a baby sent off of his planet shortly before it is exploded, where his pod then crash lands on Earth, somewhere out in the middle of a foresty area, like away from civilization. And he's like picked up by Grandpa Gohan, who then raises him as his son. That's the only part I don't quite get, is why he's referred to as Grandpa, but he's like not actually. He's raised as his son, but Goku still calls him Grandpa Gohan, so I don't quite get that.
Is he a particularly old character?
Yes, Grandpa Gohan was old.
So
He
it's
was
more like a term of respect.
He was relatively old when he started raising Goku.
Sure, it would be like calling your stepdad uncle, you know.
Yeah.
You know that's not the case. It's just a term you use.
Yeah, and obviously, initially you kind of think that Goku. Well, actually, no, I was gonna say you think Goku's the last Saiyan, but actually, technically, the whole detail of him being revealed as a Saiyan from another planet is because his older brother, who is his older brother, then comes to Earth, completely confused why Earth is completely fine and is undamaged, and also has all the native people of the planet are still alive and active. Because the detail about Saiyans is they go from planet to planet, wipe out the population, and then sell the planet, and then give the planet to the Freezer Force, where the Freezer Force then sells the planet off to whoever wants it.
Huh.
And Goku was actually sent to Earth with the actual specific reason. He was actually intended to, once landing on the Earth, then transform into a great ape when he looks at the moon, and then just wipe out the population of the planet. For then Saiyans to then arrive to a later point and then sell it off once all the people have been wiped out. But that didn't happen because Goku was found by Grandpa Gohan, and then Grandpa Gohan accidentally dropped Goku and hit his head on a rock. Well, he fell down into a hole and hit his head on a rock, which then caused Goku to not remember any of the Saiyan, have any memories of his Saiyan life before that, or anything he might remember as a Saiyan before that, because obviously he was a baby. And the only part that he actually continued was the only part he actually kept as a Saiyan after losing his memories was the Saiyan instinct for battle, because Saiyans are a warrior race, so they actively seek out battle and get enjoyment out of a fight.
Sure.
And obviously that's also one of the reasons Goku enjoys fighting, because he's a Saiyan, and he has that inbuilt trait. And although I will point out later stories like the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie did actually reveal that Goku's father Bardock actively hid Goku away and secretly launched him off of his planet, or off of planet Vegeta for him to then survive. because he knew that the character of Frieza was going to go to the planet Vegeta and then wipe out all of the Saiyans.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that may sound familiar, Bardock tried warning the people of the planet that Frieza was going to come and blow them up, but none of them listened to him. I'm sure that sounds very familiar to you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stop alluding to it. Goku's origin is very similar to Superman's,
Which explains a lot of the fan fiction that I've seen that pits them against each other, and
although that actually isn't specifically because their origin is the same. Obviously, in later years, Dragon Ball Super Broly actually revised Goku's origin to be even more similar to Superman's origin than it was before. Because initially it was kind of inspired by Superman's origin, but then after the newer Broly movie depicted Goku's origin to be even similar to Superman's, that's kind of reinforced people's ideas of the whole similarity between Goku and Superman.
right.
But I think the whole reason people have the character, or there's a whole bunch of fan fiction of the characters meeting or fighting or something along those lines, is actually because Goku's character in an early version of the dub of Dragon Ball Z actually characterized Goku at certain points to be more Western heroic rather than Eastern heroic.
Oh, I see.
So there's a moment where Goku has this speech where where what he says is more in line with something that Superman would say rather than something that Goku himself would say.
Sure.
Which, funnily enough, is actually a change the dub, the staff making the dub made, rather than the original Japanese or the original Japanese staff making. But yeah, that's kind of why the whole Goku versus Superman thing exists, is because people saw early versions of the Dragon Ball anime dub where he's characterized closer to Superman, and people then kind of connect the dots, and then you also have the inevitable people having Superman and Goku fight because they think one character is stronger than the other.
Right.
Yeah. And you also get situations where people are like, I think this character will win, and then they have very poorly explained or justified reasons why. And those fights that are clearly the person in question is having one character win because it's a character they like over the other one.
Yeah.
Rather than actually going, this character can do this and is this strong and has these feats, and this character's not as strong and doesn't have these feats, so clearly this other character would win. The more analytical side of it. Personally, I would say Goku would win that fight. But I preface by saying only the version of Goku from later in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
If you take Goku from, say, the start of Dragon Ball Z, then I think that's possibly more of an even fight. Possibly Superman may actually win that fight. But if you're taking Goku from later in the series, because over time Goku gets stronger. So if you're doing some kind of versus battle, you kind of have to specifically pick a point in time of whichever point in Goku's life you want it to be. Because I noticed something like Death Battle, they'll just composite all various abilities and things the characters can do into one, without any regard for if the ability that they mention is an ability that only the character only had temporarily, or they were only that strong for a moment, or because of a third party.
Right.
Or because the ability they use is actually something that's not even canon. For instance, one of Goku's moves is called the Dragon Fist, where he focuses his energy into his punch, and he explodes into a giant golden dragon, and then flies up and circles and wraps around the opponent, and then blows them up. But that ability is not from the manga or the anime. That is only in one of the movies. And the movies are, I suppose you could call the movies alternate timelines. That's probably the best way to explain them. So the movies aren't canon to the show or the manga. And the only other time the Dragon Fist move shows up again is in GT, which is also not canon to the show. And of course, Dragon Fist also is a move that you can use in various video games as well. But yeah, it's a move that's mostly in non-canon material.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you're gonna list that specific move as something Goku can, obviously it's something Goku can do, but he's only shown to do said thing in non-canon material. So if you only want to use the canon Goku,
Right.
then you can't use that move. It's something actually that's something that versus battles in general don't pay too much attention to, is whether or not specific things a character can do or character does, like the specific context of why the character is able to do certain things,
You actually
or
just
if
got
those
me.
things are certain alternate timelines, alternate dimensions, or if they're non-canon. Like for instance, you could take like Golden Age Superman, an ability that something that he does, but then use like I don't know, a post-crisis Superman or like one of the other Supermans that is not the same version of Superman.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking like, if your Superman has the post New 52 ability to explode out all of his solar energy like a nuclear bomb, alongside being able to take the cellophane S off of his chest and throw it at someone like
Yeah,
Superman 2.
yeah. I think I want to say that ability is a Bronze Age ability because obviously the '70s was the Bronze Age, but that
No,
ability seems more like a Golden Age Superman ability because I know Golden Age
yeah,
Superman could have all
that
kind
is
of
a
various.
that specific ability is very specifically a Donnerverse Superman thing that happened once and never again, along
Yeah,
with the Kryptonian being able to point and shoot a white laser beam out of his finger to lift someone in the air. That
yeah,
that only ever happened in Superman 2.
yeah. Or shoot a laser out of his eyes to repair a wall.
Well, actually, I'm wondering. Yeah, no, that sounds like the kind of thing that happened in Golden Age all the time.
Yeah. Although now I think about it, Superman 4 was an early '80s film, or was it mid
Yeah,
'80s?
that was early to mid 80s. Yeah,
Yes, that would still be Bronze Age then.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so yeah, so there was also that as well. The whole obviously that's obviously compositing abilities and details like that in versus battles, not necessarily exclusive to like a Goku Superman battle, but it's like kind of a thing that just versus battles do in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I will point out that most of the Dragon Ball video games actually, a majority of them are actually just retellings of the anime itself. There's actually only a small number of Dragon Ball games where they actually tell their own original story. It's funnily enough, it's actually something that Dragon Ball fans like at a certain point started complaining about the fact that most of the games would just be retelling the events of the anime itself.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was around the time the Battle of Gods movie came out, which was 2013. After that movie had a video game tie-in where it was mostly just retelling the events of the anime within including the movie itself. The very next game, Dragon Ball game that came out after that, was called Xenoverse, and it actually had a unique spin to it, where you play as an original custom character that you create, and you're part of a group called the Time Patrol, and you basically travel to different points throughout the Dragon Ball story, and you basically have to keep the timeline go like in this correct order that it should be going in, because the villains of the game are basically demons from the demon realm who are trying to actively disrupt the timeline to create enough energy to then, I think it was free the demon realm or open the demon realm up to the rest of the universe or something like that. Yeah, basically the bad guys want to open up the demon realm by using energy of the timeline being disrupted, and basically you play as like a custom character who travels to specific points in time that are being disrupted and make sure the events happen the way they are supposed to. And there's 2 Xenoverse games so far. Although I will point out that the whole Demon Realm plot line of the Time Patrol actually isn't something that was created for the Xenoverse games, but rather was created for the I think it was either the game Dragon Ball Online or it was Dragon Ball Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, although I will point out Dragon Ball Heroes is basically a card or an arcade card game that's, I want to say, very fan fiction-y, but kind of. It basically has a whole bunch of elements that feel very fan fiction-y, like the character of Broly getting multiple Super Saiyan forms that he never had, or Vegeta having different Super Saiyan forms that he was never shown having, or maybe like the character of Cell is in the game and he gets like an extra transformation after what we saw in the show, or he absorbs another character, or you get like different fusions of characters into different forms. Oh yeah, there is also instances of video game exclusive moves, sometimes like then circling back and actually appearing in the anime itself. So one move that you have, or you find, is it's a video that started out as a video game exclusive, was a move called the Final Kamehameha, which was essentially so basically in the series, Goku and Vegeta put on these Potara earrings and fused into one being, and basically and in the games when you play as that character, I think one of the games, I think it was Budokai Tenkaichi 3, there was an ability exclusive to that game for that that fused form, that basically combined Goku's Kamehameha attack and Vegeta's final flash attack into one move, and it was called the Final Kamehameha.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, that move was an exclusive move only in that game. But then, at a later point in the Dragon Ball Super anime, when Goku and Vegeta fused into Vegito during that anime, they then used that video game exclusive move in the anime, which was very cool. Yeah, so oh yeah, I completely forgot. When the live action movie came out, the original series creator Akira Toriyama, he felt so offended by by that movie that he actually like went out, and this actually spurred him to then create the movie Battle of Gods in 2013, and he actually specifically had the movie release in America first, so that he could have a movie actually show like Americans what a Dragon Ball movie looks like.
Yeah.
And then after that movie came out, it then got a sequel called Resurrection F a couple of years later in 2015. And then after that movie came out, the Dragon Ball's popularity started to then come back. So Toei decided to then produce the anime Dragon Ball Super, which for some reason the first 2 story arcs of that anime, they chose to adapt the movies that had just come out for some reason. That's a decision I don't understand. But after those 2 arcs were finished, then they did actual original stories. And it's at this point that the Dragon Ball Super anime and manga were being made, and this is where Toriyama would provide character designs and would also give a story outline to the manga author and also to the anime staff. And basically, basically what they had to do is both groups had to basically follow the general outline of the story, but were allowed to have a little bit of freedom in how they told that story. So there are some differences between the Dragon Ball Super manga and anime, but for the most part, they are telling the same story. Yeah, the differences are mostly superficial. But yeah, and that's basically how it's been for a while now. Although the Dragon Ball Super anime did end because it lasted like over 100 episodes, and then it ended, and then it kind of continued with the Dragon Ball Super movie, or the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. And the anime current hasn't come back yet. We have been hearing rumors of it coming back, but so far it hasn't. But we did get a second Dragon Ball Super movie with Superhero that came out last year. And during that time, the Dragon Ball Super manga, that's just been ongoing for the whole time. Because the manga is actually still releasing chapters. And yeah, both both Super Broly and Superhero did very well. Yeah. Although Superhero wasn't distributed by Fox, because obviously they were bought by Disney, and I think Toei themselves distributed that movie. But yeah, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and the Broly movie, those three were distributed by Fox outside of Japan. Yeah. Oh, there are also rumors going every now and then. There are rumors going around that Disney are working on a Dragon Ball movie, which makes no sense because Disney doesn't even have anything to do with Dragon Ball. Because if you if you do the research and pay attention, you'll realize that Disney doesn't have the rights. They don't even have the distribution rights for Dragon Ball. Because I think these rumors are coming from the fact that Fox distributed Dragon Ball movies outside of Japan, and then Fox was bought by Disney.
Oh,
so yeah. I think that's where that train of thought is coming from, but that makes no sense when you actually look at what's happening. Because once Disney bought Fox, then Fox then no longer had the distribution rights for the Dragon Ball films.
Yeah.
Toei themselves, the company making the anime, they then took over the distribution rights and all the involvement with distributing outside of America. Toei themselves then took over that responsibility from Fox once they were bought by Disney. So yeah, Disney doesn't own anything Dragon Ball related. So any instance you see online of any articles saying about Disney making a Dragon Ball movie or making a TV show or something, just know that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very likely any article that does say that probably has done very little, if not no, research on that.
Yeah.
Or on that specific subject. Yeah. Well, I would definitely recommend Dragon Ball. Personally, my early Dragon Ball is my favorite part of the series. I do like the later Dragon Ball Z portion, and Dragon Ball Super as well. I'm undetermined whether I like the Dragon Ball Super manga more or if I like the anime more, because I haven't read that much of the manga and I've not watched all of the anime, so I'm undetermined which one I like more. Because obviously, like I said, the difference between them are very superficial. They are mostly telling the same story otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, I would also recommend the Dragon Ball movies, or the original 13. Well, actually, I suppose it's not necessarily 13 because you have the four original Dragon Ball movies. But yeah, the 13 movies, the 4 Dragon Ball movies, and also the 3, or technically now 4 Dragon Ball Super movies with Superhero. Well, the Superhero, I don't think it's actually been distributed yet. Well, obviously I think it was in cinemas late last year, but I don't think it's actually out on DVD and Blu-ray yet. Yeah, so there is also one thing I would like to mention. Getting actual physical copies of various Dragon Ball media.
Mm-hmm.
Some parts are relatively easy. Like getting hold of the manga, it's very easy. I'd have these 3-in-1 volumes because it goes all the way from volume 1 to 42, and all of them are in three volumes, one big volume. Just 14 of these big volumes. That's it. That's the whole series. This even collects the trunks, the short trunks special or one shot or whatever you want to call it. That basically details Trunks's or future Trunks's origin, and then then this special this trunk history of Trunks special was actually based on that one manga one shot. So obviously you get that like an adaptation of that one shot here in a special form, and then you get the and then you have the manga version collected within this manga volume right here. I think it's no, not that one. Is it this one? It might be this one. Oh, there it is. So it's right here. If I do that, that's very blurry. Yeah, this right here at the very bottom, that's the Trunks, like the one manga special, or the one chapter special that details Trunks' origin, that the TV special contained here was adapted from, or was adapting, I should say. Yeah, and the only thing that I find kind of annoying is, obviously, while the manga is complete right there, and it's the same for Dragon Ball Super, most of the chapters of Dragon Ball Super, they're available in volumes. I have at least 2 of those volumes right here. Oh no, not 2, 3 volumes. No. Jesus Christ. Action figures are falling over as I grab these. You know what? I should probably move the action figures out from in front of the these manga volumes just to prevent this from happening every time. So yeah, I have 3 volumes of the Dragon Ball Super manga. I even have the 1-volume manga that Toriyama wrote, I think sometime after Resurrection F was made, called Jacko the Galactic Patrolman, which contains the one chapter story called Dragon Ball Minus that basically revamps Goku's origin, essentially. Yeah, it's a one chapter story called Dragon Ball Minus that revamps Goku's, where Toriyama himself personally revamps Goku's origin. It's mostly the same, but with some minor differences. And then the Super Broly movie itself then adapted Dragon Ball Minus anyway, or as part of its story, or at least it adapted elements of that one manga special. Yeah, the Jacko Galactic Patrolman manga is basically because Jacko himself is a newer character who was introduced in Resurrection F, or the Resurrection F movie. Mm-hmm. And then after that movie, Toriyama then wrote like a 1-volume manga about that character. And yeah, so basically all of that, like the manga, the Super manga, the Jacko manga, all of that you can get very easily off of Amazon, no problem. And the same for the early Dragon Ball manga, the 5, because they're in season sets for some reason. Even though Dragon Ball is not divided into seasons itself, it's divided into story arcs, and the story arcs kind of carry elements of the story arcs carry over and have an effect on the next story. So it's very the stories are very interconnected. So I don't know why the DVDs decided, or the American DVDs decided to release them as seasons. I don't fully understand that. But yeah, like I showed on your stream a while ago, I have 6 of the orange bricks. I don't like that I have those because they're the low quality release of the show. But the problem is every other release of the show that is available is basically the same thing as them. So there's no point me trying to buy any of those other versions if they're just a slightly modified version of those orange brick versions.
Right.
And the versions that actually are good quality ones, like the level sets and the Dragon Box release of Dragon Ball Z, those two, as I've mentioned before, those two releases are very limited in number, and are incredibly expensive and overpriced at this point, or just not even available at all. So I'm not really willing to pay like 300, 400 pounds for a set that's not even complete.
Yeah.
And that's just personally, that's just that's just a problem that Funimation themselves kind of either intentionally or unintentionally created themselves when they released those sets of Dragon Ball Z. Very annoying. And obviously, like I said, the movie's very easy to get a hold of, and the newer movies and the newer anime Dragon Ball Super, they're also very easy to get a hold of off of Amazon as well. The only part that's difficult to get a hold of is a couple of the specials and TV movies. Some of those appear to have not been collected anywhere, like the like one TV special called "Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans." That's like a 90s TV movie that doesn't appear to have been collected anywhere. And there was a remake, a mod, and I think it was in the late 2000s. Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans was completely reanimated and re-released on or as a part of one of the video games, and it was called Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans. Now I have the game that contains that movie. It's not translated into English, sadly. It's in the game is in English, but the movie that's available on the disc is in Japanese for some reason with subtitles. Not sure why. But yeah, but the original 90s Plan to Eradicate Saiyans, that's not been collected, but the reanimated version at least has one that you can get a hold of and watch. Let's see, the special Yosen Goku and his friends return. That one doesn't appear to have been collected anywhere. The GT TV movie, that one has been collected on the disc, on the DVD case of GT itself, or the release of GT itself. That also does additionally contain the GT TV movie. So at least that's collected somewhere. But yeah, Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, Yosen Goku and his friends return, and also the Dragon Ball PSA. Well, I think there was only like one PSA that Dragon Ball had. That one doesn't appear to have been collected anywhere either, and I'm not sure why. I possibly can understand the PSA not being collected, but the Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans and Yosen Goku and his friends returns not getting any kind of DVD release or inclusion in a collection whatsoever is slightly odd. I think, yeah, Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans has been was dubbed into English. I think it was only one dub though. Yosen Goku and his friends return. That one has not been translated. That one is only in. You can only watch that one online in subtitled form. Thankfully, the main bulk of the anime itself is at least available somewhere. Because if you go to Amazon and type in Dragon Ball DVD, you'll basically find these 5 Dragon Ball DVD season sets. Yeah, so you have these sets right here. And funnily enough, this DVD for season 1, it also contains the Dragon Ball movie, Curse of the Blood Rubies, which is contained right here in this, because this has all of the original 4 Dragon Ball movies. You'll probably find this interesting. One of the movies is called Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle. And an alternate title is Sleeping Princess in Dracula's Castle. I think Dracula's Castle. It's also called Sleeping Princess in Lucifer's Castle as well. That's another alternate title for the movie.
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, now I think about it, the movie itself, the actual character of Devil, he does look like Dracula in the movie as well. So I would assume Dracula's Castle is the original title, and Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle is probably a chain. I'd imagine the original Japanese title was probably intended to be perceived as Dracula rather than Devil, but I guess it's not too different considering Dragon Ball is a somewhat of a fantasy land, so I suppose it doesn't matter if it's Dracula or the Devil.
True.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting thing that one of the early Dragon Ball movies is contained on this DVD here, but then none of the other four movies are contained on any of these other discs. It's just the first movie, or the first Dragon Ball movie, which there's definitely some strange releases. But yeah, you can find these 5. Oh, that's upside down. You can find these 5 Dragon Ball season sets off Amazon relatively easily. I would imagine for an affordable price, but I haven't looked in a while, so I don't know if they're still an affordable price. That's something you definitely have to look up for yourself if they're still affordable or not.
Sure.
Yeah, and interesting detail I noticed the manga, the 3-in-1 sets, that contain all 42 volumes, that split them into threes or into 14 sections of 3, so it's 14 thick volumes. When you have these 5 season sets and then you have the 9 season sets of Dragon Ball Z, that totals up to 14 season sets. I don't know if that was intentionally planned that way, but I do find that interesting that the DVD season sets, both the Dragon Ball and the Dragon Ball Z, make up 14, while the Dragon Ball manga, the 42 volumes divided by 3 makes 14. I do find that very interesting. I don't know if that was an intentional thing, or if that's just purely coincidental.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously it would make sense to start with early Dragon Ball and then go to Dragon Ball Z. Because obviously in the West, most fans would have the first thing they would have seen is Dragon Ball Z, because that was released first, or that was dubbed first, and then Funimation went back and dubbed Dragon Ball and released that shortly after Dragon Ball Z. So then so it kind of resulted in people seeing the series out of order. So yeah, I'd recommend watching it in the actual proper order by watching the anime. And if you want to see the occasional boob, read the manga where it's uncensored. Yeah. There is also one strange thing. There is a character in Dragon Ball called Mr. Popo, who's has a very Indian design to him, or like an Indian, or like a Indian god, or like that kind of Indian mythology and that sort of thing. He's kind of designed Mr. Popo is kind of designed like that. He works on the lookout with Kami, basically as his assistant. If I can find it, I have noticed online various people every now and then. Oh no, it's not. I think it's further back. Yeah, various people have tried to make the claim that Mr. Popo's presence in the series makes it racist. Because obviously Mr. Popo, his skin color is jet black,
right,
and he has big red lips. You can probably see where that assumption comes from.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, Mr. Popo, people like to try and claim that Mr. Popo is based on the minstrel design of black people from early cartoons. People try and make the claim that Mr. Popo is based on that. Obviously, because of the jet black skin, big red lips, that's sort of where that comes from. But then they completely forget to take the time to think about where exactly Akira Toriyama got his influence for the character design from. And I can find a picture of Mr. There he is. There's Mr. Popo. Because if you look at him, you see he's very clearly influenced by like Indian mythology and that's those sort of characters.
Exactly.
And Mr. Popo's not shown in a negative way, or he's always shown as like a good person. Yeah, he's always shown as a good person who's just trying to help Goku out. There's literally nothing negative about Mr. Popo.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the dubs of Dragon Ball even went so far as to change Mr. Popo and make him blue instead of jet black. And that change was specifically done because of the whole certain people claiming racism against the series because of him. So there's at least one of the dubs of Dragon Ball Z where Mr. Popo is blue is like blue with no explanation, which makes less sense if you watch the early Dragon Ball, because this is basically the only release of Dragon Ball, or the only modern release of Dragon Ball that we have, and in this Mr. Popo is jet black. He looks exactly like he does in the manga. So if you watch this and then watch the dub where Popo is blue, it looks very weird because Mr. Popo is like suddenly a different color with no explanation, even though in story he's not meant to look different. So yeah, that's one thing to consider. You probably won't run into the whole blue Popo thing because most modern releases of Dragon Ball Z don't have the blue Popo thing. They just have Mr. Popo as he is supposed to look.
Right.
Yeah, so I suppose that's something to think about, but not necessarily something you'll necessarily have to worry about. Oh yeah, and also some of the movie exclusive villains only really reappear in video games. None of them appear to have made the jump to the actual canon story, with the exception of Broly. He's the only one who actually made the jump from like non-canon movie to canon. But yeah, all the others, they just haven't made that jump. Which for some of them it's kind of a shame, because like something like Cooler, because he's like the brother of the brother of Frieza. I feel like it wouldn't be too difficult to fit Cooler as a character into canon. Like find some explanation as to where he's been the whole time. In fact, you could even just make the Cooler movie canon to the show because it fits in with no issue. So you literally could just say, oh, the Cooler's Revenge movie happened in canon, and then have Cooler be brought back to life by Frieza or someone else.
Yeah. And
then you could like make your entirely new story with like Frieza and Cooler both in the same movie or something. Obviously, Frieza is an evil character, and he has literally no reason to resurrect any of his family members. Like, because he will happily kill anyone who aggravates him. Because I think it's what is it? He's perfectly fine with torturing literally anyone if he want, because like during the Frieza arc he was searching for the Namekian Dragon Balls, and he basically just like outright tortured the Namekians until they told him where the different Dragon Balls were. So yeah, he's a character who has no qualms about hurting and killing people. So I feel like any of his family members that were already dead, he probably won't bother resurrecting them if he has the opportunity to. Because he even said himself in the Resurrection F movie, when a character asked him if they wanted his father to be resurrected, he like just straight up said, no, there's no point. He just straight up said, yeah, no, that's a waste of a wish. Yeah, so I don't see him as resurrecting like a Cooler. Maybe someone else in like the Frieza Force may resurrect Cooler. But that depends if Toriyama himself wants to like bring in more non-canon characters into the actual canon. or not. Oh yeah, there's one thing that I've just realized I have not mentioned. Akira Toriyama is a massive fan of Star Wars. He actually included some Star Wars characters in the Dragon Ball manga itself. Obviously, as background cameos, not as like actual part of the story. Because I think it's earlier in the manga, you can see just straight up C3. Not C. It's either C3. No, not C3. You can just straight up see R2D2 in the background of one shot. Like it doesn't even look it's slightly different from like from the actual R2D2. It literally just looks like R2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also Toriyama, he's also a big fan of the first Alien movie, and obviously Terminator as well, because one of the storylines is obviously very clearly inspired by Terminator. But yeah, like I said, Toriyama, he's a big fan of various American movies, with like Star Wars, Alien, Terminator. I can't think of any others. But there is one thing I will mention. A lot of the Dragon Ball characters, their names are puns on various things, or their names are themed around various things. Like all of the Saiyans, their name comes from like the name of a vegetable. So Vegeta is literally just the word vegetable with a couple of letters removed.
Yeah.
And same for Planet Vegeta and King Vegeta and any other character who has the name Vegeta is essentially just vegetable with like 3 of the letters removed. Goku's Saiyan name of Kakarot is probably very obvious to figure out. It's Carrot, and then he's like his brother is Raditz, Radish. Then you have another character called another Saiyan called Nappa. I don't know exactly what vegetable his name is a reference to. You have and you have obviously the Saiyans are vegetables. The Frieza Force, all of their names are puns or reworded fruit. So you have Apul, Nabana, I think is one, and I can't remember the name of the others. But yeah, the random Frieza Force are all named after fruit. Frieza himself and his family, you can probably guess what their feeling is. It's like very cold objects, like Frieza, Cooler, King Cold.
Yeah.
Very well. Namekians are all named after what is it? Snails and yes, like various different words for snails. Like one character is named Cargo, like escargot.
Yeah.
Another character is called Nail, the snail. Dende is another Namekian. I think that's also comes from a French word for snail as well. I don't remember which word. I think Guru, his name also I think comes from a French word for snail, or part of a French word for snail, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have King Piccolo, and obviously King Piccolo was a Namekian, but like early on he was considered to be a demon. So King Piccolo in the early series, when him and all of his mutant demon children that he can spawn, all of them are named after musical instruments. So he has let's see, drum, tambourine, drum and tambourine, the ones that I actually remember the most for some reason. I think it's because those two are a lot more prominent in the story. Obviously, Piccolo himself comes from a wood instrument, I think. Obviously, you would assume Piccolo means pickle, but it's actually comes from a musical instrument rather than a vegetable.
Right. Piccolo is like a tiny flute.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So that's it. I know Piccolo had more than just. He had like 3 or 4 children. Yeah, I think it was tambourine, cymbal, and drum. I think that was his children. And then obviously he also had another child called Piccolo Junior. And Piccolo Junior is the one who appears later in the series and becomes a good guy on Goku's side. Let's see, humans. This is kind of weird because not all humans have the same like naming convention. Specific humans have different naming conventions. Like Bulma and her family, all of their names comes from different words that mean underwear.
Huh.
So Bulma, Bloomer,
Yeah.
Dr. Briefs, Bulma's son Trunks. Who else was there? Yeah, I think that was... Oh yeah, and Bulma and Vegeta's other child is called Bulla, which I think the original Japanese name was Bra, I think.
Huh.
Yeah. Who else? What else was there? Because I know Bulma's family is named after underwear. Saiyans are named after vegetables. Frieza Force named after fruit. Piccolo's demons named after musical instruments, and then the rest of the Namekians are named after snails. What else was there? Oh yeah, there is also on Earth in Dragon Ball, because it's a fantasy land. There are anthropomorphic animals. So at various points in the series, you will see like humanoid tigers or like humanoid cat people or that sort of thing, who just walk around, and no one's really surprised by there being humanoid animals. They're just a part of society like everyone else. Oh, and also there are dinosaurs walking around as well. Yeah. And like the humanoid animals, no one's really surprised by the presence of dinosaurs in like the wilderness. Although Dragon Ball's world itself, it's not a reflection of like our world, so there's no like various countries from the real world. Instead, it's like a completely different world map.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's like I think 4 cities called what is it? East City, North City, West City, and East City. Yeah, so the cities themselves have they're basically like high sci-fi futuristic cities, and then outside of that is it leans more into like the medieval fantasy, or I suppose Asian fantasy, given this Dragon Ball is technically an Asian story.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and also the probably this is something that I probably should have said as like the first thing. The early storyline for Dragon Ball was actually based on the Chinese book Journey to the West.
Oh.
And Goku himself is actually based on the Monkey King from Journey to the West.
Oh.
In fact, actually, his name is literally the Japanese translation of that. Because in China is Sun Wukong, and then Son Goku is literally the Japanese translation of that name.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, Goku's Earth name is literally just the Monkey King, the Monkey King's name translated into Japanese. Yeah. I would also recommend Jack of the Galactic Patrolman. I really enjoyed this, and it's just one volume, so you can literally just buy that and read that, no problem. Actually, how many chapters does this have? Yeah, 10 chapters plus 1 extra, and then the Dragon Ball minus special chapter as well. So like 12 chapters in this volume. I don't really have much else to say unless there's something else that you want to say or any more comments you want to make.
No, I found that very interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if this specific stream was as loaded on information as like the previous Transformers stream was. Because if you remember, I made the comment on the Transformers stream that you probably won't remember like half of what I said in that.
There was a lot there. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if this stream had as much there, or if this is more, if this information is more digestible.
I feel like, although there was a lot here, I feel like it was pretty straightforward. You know,
Yeah.
it was mostly understandable.
Yeah, actually, that's probably one of the advantages of manga overall. When you think of it in comparison to like Western comics, you know, like you have, like say the Silver Surfer. Like to read his story, you got to read the Fantastic Four issue. Then you got to jump over to Silver Surfer's own comic.
Right.
And then you got to jump over to like this event that's happening, and then back to Silver Surfer's comic, and then over to like this other comic that has a very similar name, but is actually a separate series. So collecting the individual issues of the two different series, you may end up accidentally getting mixed together.
Yeah.
In your collection. Whereas with like something like Dragon Ball and most other manga or shonen manga like this, it's literally just the one story. Obviously, you have extra stuff like Dragon Ball Super, but this is more something you don't necessarily have to read alongside Dragon Ball. Like, obviously, there is a specific point where something like Jacko and Dragon Ball Super would be placed in the timeline, but you don't have to read them alongside Dragon Ball. You can read these after, because like once you've read like Dragon Ball itself, it's literally just you just read volume 1, and then once you finish, you read volume 2. Then once you finish that, read volume 3. Then just rinse and repeat all the way until you're up to volume 42. And it's the same for the anime. Just pick up these, watch all 5 of these. Then when you finish that, then pick up the 9 Dragon Ball Z DVDs and watch through them in the order. And then once you finish that, if you're feeling like you want more Dragon Ball, then just pick up the 2 seasons of GT and then watch them in like their specific order. Now I think about it, it's only really Dragon Ball Super that's the one where you kind of have to think about where it's placed in order. Well, you don't necessarily have to place it in its position in the series to enjoy it. You can still watch Dragon Ball Super separately. Although honestly, I'd recommend watching Dragon Ball Super after all of the others, because Dragon Ball Super, well, it doesn't absolutely require you to know everything else about the series. The fact that it takes place later in the timeline, but not at the very end, it does mean that there are some details that you need, but not everything. I think once you've got like a handle on how these characters act and who they are, and also once you've watched like say the Majin Buu saga, then you can just pretty much go into the Super manga or the Super anime. Or because the Dragon Ball Super takes place, I think it doesn't take place right at the very end, but rather near the end of the series. You don't have to like stop watching, then watch Super, and then come back. You can just watch all of Dragon Ball Z and then watch Super. So while it's taking place slightly earlier, near the end of the series, you don't have to watch it at the point it takes place. You can come back to it once you've finished the series. Yeah, that's kind of the advantage of anime and manga overall, is that it is very straightforward. Well, 90% of the time, what you'll find is very straightforward. There's one consistent storyline all the way through. You don't have to bounce around between various series at different points.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of a thing that Western comics only sometimes does. I think there are only like a specific number of Western comic book series that have like a self-contained story that is just one thing the whole way through. Yeah. So with that said, and with us now finished talking about Dragon Ball, obviously there's more that we could say about this. I don't specifically know anything else that I could say, other than actually going through the individual story arcs. But like I said at the beginning, we don't have the time to actually go
Sure.
through every individual story arc one after the other. That would take too much time. But I would imagine this is probably only going to be a one-time thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So, yeah, let the Matrix light your darkest hour till all are one. Bye, guys.
Take care, everyone.